Jake Morrison stood in his small room on Harmony Base and stared at the broken coffee machine. The machine sat on his desk like a dead animal. Steam came out of its sides in weak puffs. The display screen showed nothing but black. He pressed the power button 3 times. Nothing happened. He unplugged the machine and plugged it back in. Still nothing. He opened the water tank and checked inside. Everything looked normal, but the machine would not work. "This cannot be happening today," Jake said to the empty room. Today was the most important day in human history. The Zephyrian Collective was coming to talk about trade deals and peace treaties. Jake had spent 6 months getting ready for this meeting. He had read every report about the Zephyrians. He had practiced their greeting customs until he could do them in his sleep. He had memorized the names of all their leaders and their ranks, but he had not planned for his coffee machine to die on the worst possible day. Jake was the kind of man who could handle almost anything. He had been a diplomat for 15 years. He had talked angry warlords out of starting wars. He had helped solve trade disputes between colonies that hated each other. He had even survived 3 assassination attempts and 2 poisoning attempts during his career. But Jake Morrison without his morning coffee was a different person entirely. Amy Brooks knocked on his door. She was his assistant and had worked with him for 2 years. She knew his habits better than anyone. "Sir, may I come in?" she asked through the door. "Come in, Amy," Jake said. His voice sounded tired and angry at the same time. Amy walked into the room and saw Jake standing over the coffee machine with his fists clenched. She had seen him angry before, but this was different. This was personal. "The Zephyrian ships will arrive in 2 hours, she said carefully. "Do you want me to find you some coffee from the station cafeteria?" Jake looked at her like she had suggested he drink poison. "The cafeteria coffee tastes like metal and sadness, Amy, you know that." Amy nodded. The cafeteria coffee was terrible. Everyone on the station knew it. Most people brought their own coffee makers or drank tea instead. But Jake was particular about his coffee. He needed exactly the right blend, at exactly the right temperature, in exactly the right cup. "I could ask the kitchen staff to make you something special," Amy offered. "The kitchen staff do not understand coffee," Jake said. "They think coffee is just hot brown water with some flavor added. They do not understand that coffee is a ritual, a necessity, a way to prepare the mind for important work." Jake sat down in his chair and put his head in his hands. Amy had never seen him look so defeated. Not even during the colony war negotiations, when the talks went on for 3 weeks without a break. "Sir, maybe you could manage without coffee for just 1 day?" Amy suggested quietly. Jake looked up at her with the expression of a man who had been asked to cut off his own arm. "Amy, I have not gone a single day without proper coffee in 12 years. 12 years. Do you know what happens to diplomats who break their routines on important days?" Amy did not know what happened, but she could guess it was not good. Down. In the station control room, Commander Lisa Hayes was having her own terrible morning. She had woken up to find that the water heater in her quarters was broken. Her shower had been ice cold. The food machine had given her breakfast that tasted like cardboard. And now she was watching the sensor displays that showed the Zephyrian ships getting closer. Lisa had been in charge of station security for 3 years. She knew how to handle pirates, smugglers, and drunk traders. But she had never dealt with aliens who thought humans were interesting pets that might be useful for simple work. The Zephyrians had made their opinions about humans very clear during the early meetings. They thought humans were emotional and unpredictable. They thought human technology was primitive and cute. They thought human society was chaotic and needed guidance from more advanced species. What worried Lisa most was that the Zephyrians were probably right about humans being unpredictable, especially when humans were having bad days. She had read all the reports about Ambassador Morrison. He was supposed to be one of the best diplomats in human space. He was calm, smart, and professional. But Lisa had also heard stories about what happened when professional people had really bad days. Her communication device buzzed. "Commander Hayes, this is Lieutenant Brooks. The ambassador is having some difficulties this morning. I think you should know about the situation." Lisa pressed the reply button. What kind of difficulties, Lieutenant? His coffee machine broke, Amy said. There was a long silence. Lisa understood immediately why this was a problem. She had served with enough career military and diplomatic personnel to know that some people could handle war zones and life-or-death negotiations, but could not handle changes to their daily routines. How bad is it? Lisa asked. He kicked the machine, sir. Twice. Lisa closed her eyes. Ambassador Morrison was not the kind of man who kicked things. He was the kind of man who stayed calm during emergencies and spoke in quiet, reasonable tones even when people were shooting at him. Can you get him some coffee from somewhere else? Lisa asked. I tried, sir. He says the cafeteria coffee is not acceptable. I think he might be right about that. Lisa had tried the cafeteria coffee once. It had been an unpleasant experience. She could understand why someone who drank good coffee every day would refuse to drink that brown liquid. Keep an eye on him, Lieutenant, Lisa said, and let me know if the situation gets worse. How could it get worse, sir? Lisa looked at the sensor display again. The Zephyrian ships were now only 90 minutes away. Trust me, Lieutenant. When humans have bad days, things can always get worse. The Zephyrian ships arrived exactly on time. Jake Morrison watched them through the observation window as they moved toward the docking bay. The ships were beautiful in a cold way. They looked like they were made of crystal and metal. Every line was perfect. Every angle was precise. Jake had managed to find some instant coffee in an emergency supply kit. The coffee tasted like bitter water with brown coloring added. It was terrible, but it had caffeine. He drank it anyway and tried to pretend it was helping. His head still hurt. His hands were shaking slightly from too much bad coffee and not enough sleep. But he had put on his best diplomatic uniform and practiced his smile in the mirror. He looked professional and calm on the outside. On the inside, he felt like a man walking toward his own execution. Amy Brooks stood beside him holding a data pad with all the important information about the meeting. She had checked everything 3 times. The conference room was ready. The documents were prepared. The translation equipment was working perfectly. Sir, they are requesting permission to board, Amy said. Grant it, Jake replied. His voice sounded normal, but Amy noticed that his left hand was making a fist and then relaxing over and over again. Commander Lisa Hayes was in the security center watching everything on the monitors. She had 6 security officers stationed around the meeting areas, but they had strict orders not to interfere unless someone was in immediate danger. This was a diplomatic meeting, not a military operation. But Lisa had a bad feeling about everything. Jake Morrison was clearly having problems, and the Zephyrians were not known for being understanding about human emotional states. The alien delegation walked through the station corridors like they owned the place. High Chancellor Vex Prima was the tallest of the group. The alien looked like a person made of living crystal. Light bent and shifted around the Chancellor in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Behind the Chancellor came 5 other Zephyrians, of lower rank. They all moved with the same precise mechanical steps. They did not look around or show any interest in the human station. They acted like they were visiting a zoo to look at interesting animals. Jake met them in the main conference room. The room had a large table with chairs for humans and special platforms for the Zephyrians. The walls were decorated with images of Earth and human achievements. Jake had hoped the decorations might impress the aliens. The Zephyrians did not seem to notice the decorations at all. Honored Chancellor Vex Prima, Jake said, using the formal greeting he had practiced. He bowed his head exactly the right amount and held his hands in the proper position. We welcome you to Harmony Base. The Chancellor made a sound like wind, blowing through metal tubes. This was how Zephyrians spoke. The station computers translated the sound into human words. Ambassador Morrison, the Chancellor said, we are here to discuss your species joining the collective. We trust you understand the great honor we offer you. Jake felt his jaw muscles tighten. The Chancellor was already talking like the decision was made. Like humans had no choice in the matter. We prefer to think of this as a mutual cooperation agreement, Jake said carefully. Both our species have much to offer each other. Sub-Chancellor Kex Tertius, who was shorter than the main chancellor but still taller than any human, made the wind chime sound that was Zephyrian laughter. "Your species is young and inexperienced," Kex Tertius said. "You have interesting ideas, but you lack the wisdom to use them properly. The collective will provide guidance and structure. You will provide raw materials and basic labor." In the observation gallery above the conference room, Amy Brooks was taking notes and watching Jake's face. She saw his left eye twitch once. That was never a good sign. Commander Hayes was watching on the security monitors. She saw Jake's hands form loose fists for a moment before he forced them to relax. "Could you explain what kind of guidance and structure you have in mind?" Jake asked. His voice was still polite and diplomatic. Chancellor Vex Prima moved to the center of the room. The crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. "Human mining operations will be expanded to serve collective needs. Human agricultural worlds will produce food for trade throughout our territory. Human military vessels will be decommissioned, as the collective maintains peace through unity, not through individual species keeping separate weapons." Jake was very quiet for a long moment. Amy could see him thinking. She knew that Jake Morrison, thinking quietly, was usually followed by Jake Morrison saying something that changed everything. "And what would humans receive in return for all of this?" Jake asked. "Protection," the Chancellor said simply. "Guidance, access to collective technology when you prove ready for it, and the honor of contributing to something greater than your single species." "How generous," Jake said. Amy noticed that his voice had dropped to a lower tone. That was definitely not good. Sub-Chancellor Kex Tertius continued talking. "Your species shows promise, but you are too emotional and unpredictable for true partnership at this time. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when you have learned proper discipline, you might qualify for higher status within the collective." Jake Morrison stood up from his chair. He walked around the table slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Amy had seen him do this before during difficult negotiations. It usually meant he was about to say something that would either solve the problem or make it much worse. "Chancellor," Jake said, still walking slowly around the room, "I want to make sure I understand your offer completely. You want us to give you our resources, our independence, our military, and our freedom to make our own decisions. In exchange, you will tell us what to do and maybe give us some of your old technology if we behave well." That is a simplified but essentially accurate summary. The Chancellor agreed. Jake stopped walking. He turned to face the Zephyrian delegation, with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Well," he said quietly, "that is certainly an interesting proposal." The negotiations continued for 4 long hours. Jake Morrison sat at the conference table and listened to the Zephyrians explain exactly how they planned to use humanity. His headache was getting worse. The terrible instant coffee had worn off, and now he felt tired and angry at the same time. Chancellor Vex Prima showed holographic displays of human mining operations. In the images, humans worked in asteroid fields, pulling out metals and rare elements. The humans in the pictures looked small and insignificant next to the massive Zephyrian machines. "Human workers are well suited for detailed extraction work," the Chancellor explained. "Your species is small enough to access difficult areas, and you reproduce quickly enough to maintain adequate labor forces." Jake felt his hands clench under the table. The Chancellor was talking about humans like they were useful animals. Sub-Chancellor Kex Tertius brought up another display. This one showed human agricultural worlds. "Food production will be standardized according to collective nutritional requirements. Local food preferences will be adjusted to match collective needs." "What about human food preferences?" Jake asked quietly. "Irrelevant," Kex Tertius said without hesitation. "Efficient nutrition is more important than personal taste. Your species will adapt." Amy Brooks was taking notes in the observation gallery, but she was mostly watching Jake's face. She had seen him negotiate through war crimes tribunals and hostage situations. She had never seen him look like this. His left eye was twitching every few minutes now. His jaw muscles were tight. His hands kept forming fists and then relaxing. "Commander," Hayes was monitoring everything from the security station. She had pulled up Jake's psychological profile on her computer. According to his file, Ambassador Morrison had excellent stress management skills and rarely showed emotional reactions during work. But the file also noted that he had very specific routines that he followed to maintain his effectiveness. Routines that had been completely disrupted today. There is also the matter of human military assets, Chancellor Vex Prima continued. The holographic display now showed human warships. These vessels will be decommissioned immediately upon joining the collective. Weapons and defensive systems will be removed and recycled for more productive uses. All of our military ships? Jake asked. All weapons of war will be eliminated, the Chancellor confirmed. The collective maintains peace through unity of purpose, not through individual species maintaining the ability to cause destruction. Jake was very quiet for a long moment. Amy could see him thinking, and she knew that was dangerous. Jake Morrison was most unpredictable when he was thinking quietly. What about our colonies that are currently under attack by pirates? Jake asked. The collective will provide protection when resources allow, Sub-Chancellor Kex Tertius said. Local security. Issues are low priority compared to collective stability. Low priority, Jake repeated slowly. Your species must understand that individual concerns are less important than the greater good of the collective, the Chancellor explained. This is a fundamental principle that humans will need to learn. Jake stood up from his chair. He walked to the window that looked out at the stars. Amy could see his reflection in the glass and his expression was not good. Chancellor, Jake said without turning around. I need to ask you something directly. Do you actually want humanity to join your collective, or do you just want to own us? The crystalline beings flickered with what might have been amusement. Ownership is an irrelevant concept, Chancellor Vex Prima said. What matters is efficient organization and proper use of resources. Proper use of resources, Jake said. He turned around slowly to face the Zephyrians. Is that what we are to you? Resources? All species are resources within the collective, Kex Tertius explained. Some species provide intelligence and leadership, others provide labor and materials. Each contributes according to their capabilities and limitations. And you have decided that humans are only good for labor and materials. Your species shows promise for basic tasks, the Chancellor agreed. With proper guidance, humans could become quite useful. Jake walked back to the conference table, but he did not sit down. Instead, he placed both hands flat on the table and leaned forward slightly. Let me tell you something about humans, Chancellor, he said. His voice was still quiet, but there was something different about it now. Something that made Amy reach for her communication device. We are listening, the Chancellor said. Humans do not like being told what we can and cannot do, Jake said. We especially do not like being told that we are not good enough to make our own decisions, and we really, really do not like being talked to like we are children who need constant supervision. Your emotional reaction proves our assessment is correct, Kex Tertius said. Mature species do not become agitated during simple negotiations. That was the moment Jake Morrison's diplomatic patience finally broke completely. Agitated? Jake said, and his voice was no longer quiet. You want to see agitated? You come into our space, you insult our intelligence, you plan to steal our freedom, and you treat us like we should be grateful for the opportunity to be your slaves, and you call my reaction to that agitation? The Zephyrians flickered more rapidly now. Amy could tell they were surprised by the change in Jake's behavior. Ambassador Morrison, Chancellor Vex Prima said, perhaps we should take a recess to allow you to compose yourself. Jake smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Oh, I am perfectly composed, Chancellor, he said. In fact, I am more composed than I have been all day. Amy, please send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the negotiations have concluded unsuccessfully. Amy stared at him. Sir, are you sure? Tell them to implement Protocol 7, Jake said, still smiling that dangerous smile. The Zephyrians looked at each other with confusion. They had no idea what Protocol 7 meant. But Amy Brooks knew exactly what it meant, and her hands were shaking as she reached for her communication device. Amy Brooks sent the message to Earth Command with shaking hands. She had heard about Protocol 7 in training, but she never thought she would see it used. Protocol 7 was what humans called the nuclear option for diplomacy. It was what happened when negotiations went so badly that Earth decided to show other species exactly what humans could do when they were angry. Within 30 minutes of Amy's message, every human ship within 50 light years started moving. Not toward Harmony Base, but toward every known Zephyrian facility, mining station, and trade route in 3-star systems. Captain Roy Davis was commanding the heavy cruiser Defiance when he received his orders. His ship had been on routine patrol near the Centauri system, checking shipping lanes for pirates. Roy had been awake for 22 hours dealing with engine problems and crew complaints about the food recyclers. "Captain, we are receiving a priority alpha message from Earth Command," his communications officer reported. Roy read the message on his command screen. Protocol 7 was now active. All human ships were to move to predetermined positions around Zephyrian facilities. No weapons were to be fired unless directly attacked, but all ships were to power their weapons and wait for further orders. Roy smiled for the first time in days. He had been having a terrible week. The engines kept making strange noises. His crew had food poisoning from the broken recyclers. His wife back on Earth was angry at him for missing their anniversary, and now he got to point his ship's weapons at aliens who thought humans were good for nothing but manual labor. "Navigation set course for the Wolf 359 mining platform," Roy ordered. "Best possible speed, and get me a communication link to every human ship in the sector." "Sir, what about the Zephyrian vessels at Wolf 359? His tactical officer asked. "What about them?" Roy replied. "We are just going to sit nearby and have a conversation with them. A very direct conversation." Captain Sarah Kelly was commanding the destroyer Lightning when she received her orders. Her ship was closer to the Zephyrian refinery platform at Kepler 438. Sarah had been dealing with a reactor cooling problem for 3 days. Her daughter back home had just broken up with her boyfriend and had been calling every few hours to cry about it. Sarah had not slept properly in a week. "Tactical, how many Zephyrian ships are at the refinery platform?" Sarah asked. 3 civilian vessels and 1 small patrol ship, Captain," her tactical officer reported. "Good," Sarah said. "Take us to within weapons range of the platform. Power up all weapon systems, but do not lock onto any targets yet." "Captain, should we hail them and explain what we are doing?" Sarah thought about that for a moment. "No. Let them figure it out for themselves. Sometimes the best communication is letting people wonder what you are planning to do next." Back on Harmony Base, Chancellor Vex Prima was beginning to understand that something was very wrong with their careful plan. The station's sensors were showing more and more human ships appearing around Zephyrian facilities. "Ambassador Morrison," the Chancellor said, and for the first time there was worry in the wind chime voice. "What is the meaning of these ship movements?" Jake Morrison was sitting in his chair again, but now he looked completely relaxed for the first time all day. His headache was gone. His hands were steady. He was smiling like a man who had just solved a difficult puzzle. "Oh, those ships?" Jake said casually. "Well, Chancellor, you made an excellent point earlier about human emotional instability. We really are quite unpredictable when we are having bad days." The tactical display in the conference room now showed 47 human ships surrounding every major Zephyrian facility in 3-star systems. The ships were not firing, not threatening, just sitting there with weapons powered and ready. "You see," Jake continued, "the thing about humans is that we do not like bullies. We really do not like being told we are not good enough, and we absolutely hate being treated like we should be grateful for the chance to be someone's property." Sub-Chancellor Kex Tertius was flickering rapidly with agitation. "This is an act of war. The collective will not tolerate such aggression." "War?" Jake looked genuinely surprised. "Chancellor, we have not fired a single shot. We have not damaged any of your property. We have not even made any threats. We are just having a conversation." "Then why are there human warships surrounding our facilities?" Jake's smile got wider. "Well, I thought you should meet some other humans who are having the same kind of bad day I have been having." Captain Davis out. "At Wolf 359 has been awake for 22 hours dealing with broken equipment." Captain Kelly at your refinery platform has been listening to her daughter cry about boys for 3 days straight. Commander Peterson over by your trading post just found out his pregnant wife is having complications. The ambassador stood up and walked around the table again, but this time his movement was relaxed and confident. So you see, Chancellor, you now have 47 ship commanders who are all tired, frustrated, and fed up with various problems. And all of them just heard the recording of this meeting, where you explained how humans are only good for digging in mines and growing food. Chancellor Vex Prima's crystalline form was flickering in patterns that Amy had learned meant extreme confusion. What do you want from us? I want to renegotiate our agreement, Jake said simply, as equals, with mutual respect, and with terms that actually benefit both of our species instead of just yours. And if we refuse, Jake shrugged, then you get to find out what 47 humans do when they are really having a bad day. And Chancellor, trust me when I tell you that none of us want to find out what that looks like. The new negotiations took exactly 47 minutes. Chancellor Vex Prima and the Zephyrian delegation signed a completely different treaty than the one they had brought to Harmony Base. This treaty established humanity as an equal partner in the Zephyrian collective, with full control over human space, shared technology agreements, and mutual defense promises. Jake Morrison watched the Chancellor sign the documents with what he had learned to recognize as crystalline confusion. The aliens' light patterns were dim and uncertain, nothing like the confident brightness from earlier in the day. Your species continues to surprise our computer models, Chancellor Vex Prima admitted. We did not expect this level of organized response to failed negotiations. That is the thing about humans having bad days, Jake explained. He was finally drinking proper coffee that Commander Hayes had somehow gotten from the Zephyrian ship's food machines. It was excellent coffee, much better than his broken machine had ever made. We do not just get angry and make noise, we get creative. And when 47 humans with military training all get creative at the same time, well, things happen very quickly. Amy Brooks was writing her report for Earth Command. She was trying to figure out how to explain that humanity's first major diplomatic victory had been achieved mostly through sleep deprivation, broken coffee machines, and general frustration with alien arrogance. The collective will need to change our files about human capabilities, Sub-Chancellor Kex Tertius said. The alien sounded tired, which Jake had not known was possible for Zephyrians. We clearly did not understand the strategic value of what you call emotional responses. Captain Davis's voice came through the communication system from his ship at Wolf 359. Ambassador, we are getting reports from all positions. The Zephyrians at every facility are requesting immediate talks with our local commanders. Word seems to travel fast in their collective. Jake nodded. Tell them we are happy to talk, but remind them that it has been a long day for everyone, and humans who do not get enough rest and coffee tend to make decisions that surprise even us. Commander Hayes came into the conference room carrying a repair kit and some replacement parts. Ambassador, I thought you might want to know that I found the problem with your coffee machine. The power coupling was installed backwards. It should work fine now. Jake looked at the repair kit and then at the cup of excellent Zephyrian coffee in his hands. You know what, Lisa? I think I will keep it broken for a while. This has been an educational experience. As the Zephyrian delegation prepared to leave the station, Chancellor Vex Prima stopped at the airlock. Ambassador Morrison, if I may ask, a question. Was this entire situation planned from the beginning of our negotiations? Jake thought about the question while finishing his coffee. Chancellor, 6 months ago when we started these talks, I was hopeful that we could find common ground through mutual respect and understanding. This morning when my coffee machine broke, I was just trying to get through the day without saying something I would regret later. He looked out at the stars where human ships were slowly moving away from their positions around Zephyrian facilities. The truth is, you never really know what humans are capable of until you see what they do, when everything goes wrong at the same time. We are not the most advanced species in the galaxy. We are not the strongest or the smartest. But we are very good at adapting when situations become difficult. The Chancellor's light patterns shifted to what Jake had learned meant thoughtful consideration. Perhaps that is why your species survived long enough to reach the stars. Perhaps, Jake agreed. But I think it is also why other species should be careful about how they treat us when we are having bad days. After the Zephyrians left, Jake found Commander Hayes in the station control room. She was watching the sensor displays that showed human ships returning to their normal patrol routes. "Sir, Earth Command wants a full report on Protocol 7's effectiveness," Hayes said. Jake looked at the displays showing peaceful space traffic returning to normal. "Tell them it worked better than we expected. But make sure they understand that the key was not the ships or the weapons or the tactical positioning. The key was that we had a bunch of humans who were tired, frustrated, and completely fed up with being talked down to." He turned to Hayes with a grin. "Turns out that combination is exactly what the galaxy needed to see. Sometimes the best diplomacy happens when you stop trying to be diplomatic and just be honest about what you are thinking." The next morning, Jake's coffee machine was working perfectly. The repair had been simple once Hayes found the right parts. But Jake kept the emergency instant coffee packets in his desk drawer, just in case humanity ever needed to have another bad day. Within a week, alien species throughout the sector began adding a new section to their diplomatic procedures. The new rule required adequate rest periods and proper refreshments for human negotiators before any major discussions. It became known as the Morrison Protocol, and it prevented more interstellar conflicts than any formal peace treaty ever written. 3. Months later, Jake received a message from Chancellor Vex Prima. The collective had voted to make him an official advisor on human psychology and behavior. The message included a gift, a top-quality coffee machine with a note that said, "For diplomatic emergencies." Jake kept the coffee machine in his office, but he never used it. He had learned that sometimes the best solutions come from having the worst possible days. The Morrison Protocol was eventually adopted by 43 different alien governments. It saved the galaxy from countless diplomatic disasters, all because one human diplomat had a broken coffee machine on the wrong day.